Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Aaron Campbell. How are you today, Aaron?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. And I guess let's just kick things off with having an overview of who you are, what you do, because straight out the bat, probably not my normal guest, but I know someone that is going to have a ton of value.
All right. I'm Aaron Campbell. Like you said, I work for GoDaddy now, full time focused on the WordPress open source project. But I come from a long time background in running my own business, my own web design and development business.
Amazing. So for you, you've been at GoDaddy since 2015, right?
Yes.
How was my first question straight out of the bat is how was that transition from business owner to joining GoDaddy were massive in 2015 as well, right?
Yeah. That thousands of people compared to what I was coming from of like
Exactly.
five or six.
How did you how did you have that transition of five or six to walk into an office where there were actually people in the kitchen?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting adventure, but it was actually far less difficult than I had worried. I had definitely worried after having worked for myself for, I guess, 12 or 14 years at that point. I was very worried about being able to function well working
Yeah.
for someone else. It's part of why I was very careful as I was looking for this opportunity to step away from my company and into something else to find the right company to join. And GoDaddy really helped make that possible by essentially making space for me to really pursue my passion of open source and specifically WordPress open source. From within this company that kind of empowers me to do so. It turned out pretty great.
So they created that ecosystem for you to thrive, I guess.
It was an all new role that we sort of got
Amazing.
to create together and make happen. Yeah.
So for you, when in those early days, and we'll come on to talk more about what your focus is now, but in those early days of that switch, what caused it? What was the reason for you to think, you know what, I've been running my business for 12, 14 years. It's time for change. It's time for me to do something different because that's a big decision to make.
Yeah, it very much was. It was one that I struggled with a lot. It really came from a couple big things kind of happening all at once. The business itself was at an inflection point where it was growing and we were bringing on new people. And for small companies, right, that's a big challenge that
Yeah, it's a big
involves,
step.
yeah, it often involves sort of restructuring or reorganizing. And so the business was at that point. And then personally, I was at a similar inflection point where there were some other areas in my life that I really wanted to be able to focus more of my time and energy on. And I'd been sinking the vast majority of my time and energy into building this company and growing it up. And I needed to be able to put that elsewhere. So I wanted to be able to look around and find something where, as I stepped away from the company, I could leave it in a good spot to where they could continue to reorganize and grow and move on. And I personally could do something pretty different, but that continued to support my life and my lifestyle that
Yeah.
I wanted to have, which was kind of the whole purpose of having the business to begin with.
And I'm guessing with joining GoDaddy, you also stepped into support that you probably never had for, well, at least 12, 14 years of running your own business.
It really gave me the chance to kind of once again focus on the things that I love to do, right? Like when I started my business, I was essentially a web developer, right? And I got to focus on that and do that. But then there was all the other business stuff that had to happen along with it, right? You quickly become
all the admin came with it.
Exactly. And then as you grow, like you instantly become HR and like all this stuff. And at GoDaddy, all those things exist. And I, again, get to focus on the things that I really love and sort of spend my time doing that.
Yeah, which is really one of those things that sometimes you only realize after the fact as well, because those small changes when you're running your own business, they happen over time, not overnight. And when things happen over time, we often don't realize. It's like, you know, if you gain or lose weight, it doesn't happen overnight, it happens over time. So with GoDaddy as well, you know, you mentioned that they created this role for you. How was it to step into that and to, I guess, make your mark is probably the right phrase with this, in terms of that new role, completely new people, and how did you find that?
It's honestly, it's been a really great fit and fun project for someone who has kind of come from this entrepreneurial, running your own company background, because essentially I'm starting a small, you know, at the beginning, I was essentially starting a small division group, whatever, within GoDaddy. So it was building out a plan like you do as a entrepreneur, and
did you go in it with that frame of mind as well, looking at it almost as if this is a business, but like we said, with the incredible amount of support that you have?
Yeah, I think that was my frame of mind. It was I want to build this new thing inside this bigger company. I'm going to use all their support and resources and knowledge and whatnot. But I'm gonna build this part that is important to me and that I'm passionate about. So it made this kind of great overlap.
Amazing. Did you have any conflict? Because I've spoken to a couple of people over the last couple of months where they've had their own business, and this, you know, COVID and 2020 full stop has shown them that perhaps they're not as passionate as they once were, but they have this little devil on their shoulder saying, like, you can't get a job because you're an entrepreneur. They have like a Gary V sounding shoulder that says that. Oh,
so when I said that I struggled with this decision to sort of step away from my company, like you have just like put words to that struggle for sure. Like I really wasn't sure that I was capable of essentially turning off the entrepreneur and becoming a person that worked for someone else. And
it's a complete change of identity as well.
Yeah, and I think that the big key for me with why it was successful and has been successful for me was that I didn't have to turn off the entrepreneurial part of me completely. Yes, I'm not in full control. Like I don't run GoDaddy, obviously, but that tool set, that frame of mind that I have turned out to be very useful in my current role.
And that's what it is, really, isn't it? Like, I do truly believe that an entrepreneur is 95% in the mindset. And if you're in a position, or anyone's in a position where the business that they've started isn't giving them that excitement, fire in the belly anymore, that actually moving into a role or another business or whatever your next move is okay. And I think that's the big thing that people have to realize.
And I think that it's important to make sure that you find the right place to go as you're trying to make that move, even if your plan is just to do something temporarily until you feel that fire again and want to go back out on your own. Finding the right place to go and recognizing that all these skills and this reputation that you've built as an entrepreneur, doing whatever it is that you have been doing, those translate to to other things. Like your reputation and your knowledge, that stays with you, not with whatever company you're currently running.
And I think actually now more than ever, companies will probably see that as a huge benefit, because especially as more and more companies are working from home more often. I'm not sure what's the GoDaddy setup? Are you all working from home at the moment? Do you normally have an office you go to?
So I have been work from home since I started with GoDaddy.
That's such an easy transition.
Right. And that was still something that was very important to me. Again, it's different aspects of a job may be more important to certain people. For me, working from home was very important, and it helped make that transition smooth. As for GoDaddy as a whole right now, in this interesting 2020 time, almost everyone is work from home at the moment. GoDaddy has essentially set everyone up with home offices, and everyone that doesn't need to be physical hands-on servers or maintaining the facilities that so many people used to work from, they're all working from home now.
Another classic example of actually the small businesses that have struggled with this, and versus the power of a team and the power of a successful money making business at the end of the day. Let's talk about your focus within GoDaddy then, because we've titled this podcast "Helping Businesses Take Control of Their Internet." But I already know that I'm going to get comments being like, Steven, that's quite a vague title. So how do we narrow down that in terms of your role and your focus and what you do?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, that kind of focus is very much GoDaddy's focus overall, empowering the entrepreneur, the small business owner, to continue to do the things that they are best at, the things that they want to do, and be able to leverage the power of the internet without having to become a web professional, right? You don't want to spend all your time learning to do this new thing. You want to focus on what you do, but still leverage that power. That's really a huge part of what GoDaddy focuses on doing. And me within that, I'm focused on the WordPress open source project and how that is part of that overall vision of giving those entrepreneurs and those small business owners that power that they need. And I think that WordPress is one of those tools that really give that power to those people.
Yeah, I love WordPress. If WordPress wants to sponsor me, or if I should say, if GoDad wants to sponsor this podcast, let's talk about that. But for you, that feedback from small business owners, that feedback from entrepreneurs, how important is that for you to be able to do your job right and obviously work on this project to the maximum of your potential?
So that was a thing that I absolutely loved about moving to GoDaddy. So a little bit of background there, right? I've been contributing to WordPress, helping build the WordPress open source project since 2007, so wow. 13 years. And I did that when it was my own time out of my, company. I helped empower my employees to do that. It's always been a passion and an important part, making sure that this tool that I'm bringing to small business owners continues to improve and get better and that kind of stuff. But this feedback that you're talking about from small businesses, entrepreneurs, from GoDaddy customers is huge in helping the WordPress project as a whole know what they need to do, where they need to go, what users are struggling with. There's long been sort of this little bit of a disconnect between the people developing WordPress, working on the open source project, and the end users that are using it. And
how do you bridge that gap then? How do you communicate to those end users that are using it on a day-to-day basis, and versus, I guess, the end users that will happily jump on WordPress forum and talk about some problems?
Yeah, I think that a big part, at least the way I see it, a big part of my role and my team's role here at GoDaddy is to help give those users, those people that are using WordPress but wouldn't normally interact at all with the WordPress project to essentially bring their voice to the table at the WordPress project, right? To advocate for them and their needs as we see them, because GoDaddy has very direct interaction with them through our care team, through support, through seeing the features that are being requested, right? All of that, a big part of my job is bringing that into the WordPress project and helping everyone else that's working on the project understand those needs and be able to meet them.
You must have such a unique access into people's problems.
It's amazing, and honestly, our care team is fantastic with this. And anytime that I interface with them and say, okay, what are the biggest struggles with WordPress, right? The insights that I get from them who are talking to people who are struggling with their site, they talk to people every day like that. It's fantastic. It's so useful and helpful.
What's the most rewarding part of your role now then? Because when someone's got their own business, I think the reward can be really tangible and quite clear. Hitting goals that you've set and very vision-based sort of reward feeling. For you, what is that now? What have you replaced that with? And could you give me any examples of something that you've just been really proud of over the last couple of years?
I think that the biggest part of that comes from a much bigger picture view of what I see myself as doing, which is helping to promote and maintain and encourage the openness of the web through working on these open source projects that help ensure that the web stays open and available. I see the internet as a whole as being extremely valuable in helping to sort of level the playing field a little bit, especially between small businesses and bigger ones, right? We see that many more small businesses are able to compete in ways that they never were able to because they're able to leverage the internet to do that. And I think that my role in helping make sure that WordPress continues to be a viable option for people to be able to do that very thing, that's really my reward. And every time I see some specific example of that, some small business that says, hey, I used to build this thing, I do leather working and now I sell it through my WordPress site. And, I just shipped my first thing to, Japan or whatever, because I'm now global. That's where I think that reward comes from now.
Amazing. I mean, those stories you must just be hearing quite a lot. And I guess maybe even more so in the recent months in 2020 when people have had the time to really focus on building up small micro businesses and things like this. Yeah,
I think that they've been equally encouraging stories, but coming at it kind of different. A lot of small business owners that instead of saying, hey, I've done this thing and now I feel like I'm successful in a different way, they're saying, hey, I would have lost my business, but didn't. I've maintained it and been able to hold on to this thing that I love because of that. And to me, that's awesome too, right? Like,
does that make you feel proud?
Absolutely. I mean, I know what it's like to really love what you're doing and to want to keep that business alive and going. And if we can empower people to do that, that's amazing.
Oh, for sure. And that feeling, I guess, is coming back to that question I asked a minute ago in terms of how do you keep that like motivation and that inspiration for yourself. Having days like that and having stories like this, that must just make you, I was going to say go home and feel great, but you're already working from home. So just like leave your home office and
Yeah.
feel great, which is
Yep.
fantastic. For you, what's some of the big plans then? What can happen next, especially with like WordPress, for example? Because as a consumer, you look at WordPress and you kind of think, well, actually, they've basically got it nailed now. So where do you think it can evolve to in terms of that, open web format and the continuation of what you've been working on?
Yeah, I mean, I love that people think we've got it nailed now. That's
You don't
fantastic
want
to
too many
hear.
people to think that though, because
Right, right. But I do think that there's still a lot of room for growth in the platform, the product itself, right? There is a lot of competition in the space now, right? And there are platforms that I think are making it even easier for people to get online. But with fewer of the freedoms, less of the ownership of your own data and your own sort of piece of the internet. And I'd like to see WordPress continue to push ahead in making it easier and easier for people, so that again, you can focus on doing what it is that you want to do, and having this spot on the internet that's yours to talk about it, or to sell your things or whatever, is so easy that you don't even really have to think about it or worry about it. And a lot of that is happening in very constant incremental changes in WordPress. But we have a long ways to go. Like, it's easier than it's ever been, but it could be a lot easier still.
yeah, I suppose every year there's probably a moment where you think it's easier than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think every so often I try to use WordPress from a year or a couple years ago, and just remind myself that we've come a long way.
I would
And
love to see version 1 actually. I would just
oh
like to have a
no,
snapback or an
no, I don't think you
interaction of
would.
version 1 WordPress
It's
and
fine
just
to
how
see in
clunky it is.
screenshots. It's fine to see in screenshots, but you don't actually want to interact with it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
feels
You do not
very
want that
old,
anywhere near your server. Let's put it
right?
that way. It's going to be infiltrated very quickly. Aaron, one of my next questions, and maybe one of my final ones, but for you, do you ever miss the business? Do you ever miss being your own boss? I know it sounds like you've really cemented your new identity within GoDaddy. They've given you this really great resource to run with, and this, you've carved out, like we said, it kind of sounds like a mini business within GoDaddy, which is fantastic. But do you ever miss just being your own boss? Do you ever miss that?
Absolutely. I mean, it would be a total blatant lie if I said I didn't. Probably most so when I'm trying to advocate for something new or some different thing to do in my space within GoDaddy, and people are disagreeing. And I remember when it was just me that got to make that call.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's useful and helpful to refine your ideas by having pushback from other people, but sometimes it's really nice to just be able to make that call and move forward with it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sometimes it's great that the buck stops with you. Other times, not so much.
for sure, for sure. So yeah, there are times that I miss it. It's not that I'm not happy where I am, or don't love what I do, but yeah, absolutely, there is, for sure.
Amazing. And but pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, obviously you were traveling, speaking on stages. Is that something you've missed? Is that something you're looking forward to going back doing, or have you now sort of got yourself set up at home for the international webinars?
I so much miss it. I loved that direct in-person feedback from other WordPress users. I also realize how much I took that for granted, for the networking with all these other in person, with all these other people that I work with every day, because the people that I work with are all around the world, and I work with them all the time. But those times of being able to, sit next to them in a talk, or even just go out to dinner after or something, like, I definitely miss that, for sure.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's something that I think everyone took for granted.
Yeah.
And when things, when conferences especially start opening up, I actually think that the quality of them is going to be ridiculously high. Like,
I think so too. I
which is
think
perfect. That's such a good move.
everyone's going to be so excited to get back to it. They're just going to sink everything into it. We're all going to be totally tired of the online only conferences, which, don't get me wrong, they can be great, and they're certainly better than not being able to share around our information and ideas, right? But I definitely look forward to getting back to some of the in-person time too.
I mean, imagine this all happened when MSN was still the thing. How grainy those videos would be.
Yeah, it really, I mean, as far as still being able to get together virtually, we're in a time where we definitely have the tools and the capabilities and the bandwidth for internet and stuff to be able to do that. I guess we should be a little thankful that it didn't happen a decade ago.
It's one of those things that you take it as you want. I guess you handle it as you want. But Aaron, listen, I want to really thank you for coming on today, because this has been a slightly different talk, but one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. Your expertise and the fact it's so obvious about how much you care about the development of this and care about the user experience, which is so nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's I love to get the chance to talk about this stuff. So
no, it's fantastic having you on, and I wish you all the best. And listen, when you have a conference coming up, let me know, because I want to see you on stage.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365.